Imagine waking up before sunrise on your own land and seeing cops, cameras, and a smug HOA president waiting to shut down your family's vineyard. What would you do if your HOA tried to bulldoze your legacy just to juice their property values? I'm Marcus Thornfield. And this is the story of how a little suburb tried to crush a 40-acre heritage vineyard and how that backfired. Big time. Dawn in Solstice Valley is church. Cold mist drifts low like a soft blanket. Vines beaded with dew. The smell of soil and green and, life. I'm out there at 5 in the morning with pruning shears when sirens cut the quiet. The crunch of boots on last season's leaves. Radios crackling. And at the end of the gravel lane stands the queen of Solstice Heights, Karen. Perfect blowout. White SUV that's allergic to dust. Phone up. Recording like she's about to win some HOA Oscars. She smirks. I sip coffee. And I think, lady, you just picked the wrong hill to die on. See, 3 years back, I was a corporate lawyer in San Francisco, billing $400 an hour in suits that cost more than a month's rent. Then my marriage went sideways, yeah. That's the nice version. And the divorce cleaned me out faster than a slot machine on a bad streak. What I had left was my grandfather's place, 40 acres of grapes and memories in Solstice Valley. He started the vineyard in 1962, when neighbors knew how to wave and mind their own business. I moved into the creaky farmhouse, with floorboards that complain like old knees, and a German shepherd named Barrel, who treats every delivery truck like it owes him money. The irrigation was ancient. The tractors were older than disco. But the first time I watched the sun slide over those vines, man, it felt like therapy. Real therapy. Then Karen introduced herself. Think PTA president energy, but with a law school vocabulary and a taste for power. She runs the Solstice Heights HOA like a tiny kingdom. Her husband, Preston Hartwell, is a local developer who cranks out beige castles that all look copy-pasted. She shows up one Tuesday while I'm digging post holes for new deer-proof fencing. White power suit. Heels somehow not sinking in the dirt. Clipboard like a badge. That fence violates our aesthetic guidelines, she announces. I lean on the shovel. Ma'am, this land's been farmed since before your cul-de-sac existed. She does a little laugh that ain't a laugh. Rules are rules. We have standards. And she clicks back to her white SUV, like she just wrote me a ticket. 2 days later, a certified letter lands on my kitchen table like a threat. Cease and desist. Unauthorized agricultural structures. Residential zoning. Daily fines. And because Karen never does anything halfway, she CCs the county, my bank, and the local paper. Not a complaint, an ambush. What she doesn't know, I spent 15 years in real estate law. My grandfather's deed came with agricultural protections that I revend every 4 butter. Don't care about HOA mood boards. I dig through old files until I'm sneezing dust. In a folder labeled, Important Keep Forever, I find the magic words, perpetual farming rights. Translation, this land grows grapes. And no HOA can cosplay City Hall and say otherwise. I mail my response with copies of the deed and the exemption. Polite. Surgical. The kind of letter that makes bullies blink. A county inspector named Rodriguez drops by. He's respectful. Checks the barn from 1965. The equipment shed from the late 90s. Even the old root cellar. All good. He says, Your exemption's ironclad. The breeze shivers the leaves. I swear Beryl nods. That should have been the end, Karen. Though, she escalates. There's an emergency HOA meeting about community beautification. Subtle as a sledgehammer. I show up. The community center smells like carpet cleaner and anxiety. Karen's at the head table with 2 board members who bobblehead at everything she says. She clicks through a PowerPoint about neighborhood character and protecting our investment. Then she unveils a petition, Concerned Neighbors of Solstice Heights versus apparently my vines. She talks like I'm running a bootleg chemical plant. I'm gearing up to reply when Mrs. Patterson, retired teacher, spine like rebar, stands up and says, Marcus's Vineyard is the reason this valley's worth living in. A few more old-timers back her up. Karen's smile cracks. Just a hair. On my way out, I spot her whispering with a guy carrying a briefcase that probably bills by the minute. Great. She's lawyering up. The next week, the social shaming starts. A Facebook group pops up, Concerned Neighbors of Solstice Valley. Karen posts photos of my tractor at angles that make it look like a war machine. She asks if anyone else has noticed flies or strange trucks. You can almost smell the perfume through the screen. Folks who used to wave suddenly, don't see me. I dig into records because when something stinks, follow the paper. Preston owns more dirt than anyone realized. 3 completed subdivisions. 2 in planning. And he's been quietly buying farmland for years. Do the math. Farmland sells cheap. Residential land sells high. If they pressure me to sell, he makes millions. I've seen this playbook. Use the HOA as the battering ram. So I hire a surveyor and request a full title search going back decades. And oh boy, the results sing. Turns out my boundary runs 50 feet farther east than I thought, right under the back fences of 3 HOA homes. My grandfather had granted construction easements, but never sold the underlying dirt. Classic farm move, never sell the soil. Just loan the privilege. Even better, a utility easement laces through the entire subdivision. Roads, power, water, legal arteries no hoe can clog. Karen, sensing something, calls a community safety meeting. She waves petitions with signatures that look suspiciously alike. It would be funny if it wasn't so mean. She tries to paint me as a fire hazard, a drunk driver magnet, a threat to the children. I sit in the back and listen, and I realize she's panicking. The nastygrams arrive next. A thick envelope from a fancy firm. Cease and desist. Public nuisance. Noise. Traffic. A list of alleged violations long enough to wallpaper a bathroom. 72 hours to shut down all commercial activity. Classic scare tactic. Money's tight. Lawyers are not. But I still know the terrain. That night, I take a thermos of coffee to the courthouse and comb dusty ledgers until my eyes blur. Buried in a misfiled folder from 1987. I find the Mother Lode Solstice Valley's original historic agricultural district designation. Not a feel-good ribbon reel law with teeth. Any development within 2 miles of heritage vines requires environmental impact studies. Guess who never filed a single one? Preston's permits, paper castles. If the state looks, the whole subdivision shakes. I loop in my old friend Jake Morrison, an environmental attorney who lives for cases like this. He laughs that dry lawyer laugh. Buddy, this smells like Rico. I bring in Dr. Sarah Bennett, a soil scientist with the state university. She takes one look at grading maps and water tables and says, they violated pretty much everything. Father Miguel, a community organizer who's been fighting displacement for a decade, joins to rally farm families who've been bullied into selling. It stops being just my fight. It becomes ours. We put up cameras. We document everything. Jake digs through HOA finances and finds payments to contractors that exist only on paper. Embezzlement. Much Dr. Bennett's report maps groundwater contamination from shoddy septic installs and erosion from bad grading. The photos look like crime scene evidence. Because, well, they kinda are. Miguel uncovers a pattern. 4 other farm families pushed, prodded, harassed over 5 years. 2 sold under pressure. That's a story federal prosecutors understand. Karen answers with vandalism and whispers. Irrigation slashed in the night. Surgical cuts that dump thousands of gallons on my best Pinot. Anonymous calls scare wedding clients with talk of chemical contamination. Fake reviews sprout online claiming food poisoning and ruined receptions. Barrel noses the air, like even he can smell the lie. Jake gets a temporary restraining order, 18 pages that say, "In lawyer. Stop the harassment." Meanwhile, the bank freezes Preston's construction credit lines. Subcontractors go unpaid. Houses sit half-finished in the sun like stranded ships. Preston appears one foggy morning with a briefcase and a smile that doesn't touch his eyes. "Marcus," he says. "Let's be reasonable. $4 million in cash. Close in 48 hours. He calls it a generous compromise. I call it what it is, panic. When I decline, the mask slips. You have no idea who you're messing with. Thing is, I'm wearing a wire. Agent Rodriguez, the inspector, isn't just county. He's federal. Every bribe, every threat, every anonymous complaint has become part of a larger story about wire fraud, mail fraud, environmental crimes, and yeah, racketeering. Karen spirals online. 20 posts a day. Conspiracies about my taxes, my divorce, my wine. Even the faithful start backing away. You can only shout wolf so many times before the HOA board starts looking for a new shepherd. Jake sets a mediation at town hall. Cameras in the back. State investigators observing. Our team is ready. Dr. Bennett has visuals. Miguel lines up families to speak. Ethel, the courthouse clerk who's seen everything since the Nixon years, finds key filings that were misfiled back in the day. The trap hums like a tuned engine. Town hall night. The room is standing room only. Karen arrives early in her best power suit. Chin high. Preston comes flanked by attorneys with briefcases that probably have their own zip codes. When the mediator calls us to order, you can taste the nerves in the air. Karen leads with a monologue about neighborhood harmony and illegal agricultural operations. She waves petitions. Preston offers to restore peace by buying me out at fair market value. If you squint, you'd think they were heroes. I thank the room for their patience and start walking folks through the real record. Perpetual farming rights from the 1960s. Historic district protections from the late 80s. Survey lines that run straight under their fences. Utility easements that no board can block. Then I share the missing environmental studies. The fake contractors. The money sloshing through shell companies like water through a leaky barrel. Murmurs. Then silence. Then the click of a door at the back as federal agents walk in with warrants. Karen points and yells, "Set up." But her voice shakes. Preston goes the color of unprimed drywall. The handcuffs clap shut with that sharp little sound that says, "Game over." 6 months later, look. I'm not gonna lie, the sentencing tasted better than a perfect harvest. The judge called Preston's operation a systematic exploitation of agricultural families. Karen got her own time, minimum security. Short, but long enough to end the reign of porcelain white SUVs. The HOA dissolved. Homeowners realized they'd been paying dues to a board that treated power like a toy. The state condemned the worst of the unpermitted McMansions. Bulldozers turned bad ideas into open space and wildlife corridors. Our valley earned an official heritage designation with protections you could armor a truck with. The Vineyard bounced back, and then some. Media coverage sent tasting room lines down the driveway. Weddings filled every weekend through next year. Barrel adopted a rescue buddy, Justice, who trots the rows like a furry deputy. Dr. Bennett Sarah moved into the farmhouse with soil maps and a smile that makes the whole world quieter. We built the Solstice Valley Heritage Foundation. Scholarships for ag kids. Garden plots for families. Field trips, where second graders learn that grapes don't grow in grocery stores. Father Miguel's Sunday messages about defending God's green earth now pack pews across the county. I get calls from Oregon, Texas, Vermont folks facing the same playbook: anonymous complaints, weaponized aesthetic codes, dirty permit tricks, scare letter blitzes. And every time I say the same thing: you're not crazy. You're not alone. And you've got more rights than they want you to know. Do I think Karen and Preston were the only ones? Nah. There's a network: developers who treat land like a slot machine, and HOAs like hired muscle. Federal investigators are pulling those threads now. Me, I keep receipts. Keep recording. Keep telling the story so the next family doesn't get steamrolled. Sometimes at dusk, Sarah sets down her soil core and we stand looking over the rows. The dogs chase fireflies. The valley breathes. I think about my grandfather's hands, cracked and steady, and how he wrote those few lines on a deed that saved us 60 years later. I think about neighbors who found their voices, and a clerk who remembered a misfiled folder, and a priest who fought like hell with gentleness. And I think about sunrise, that morning sirens, boots, cameras, and how close I came to handing over everything because a bully said rules are rules. They are, but so are rights. So tell me, what would you do if your HOA slapped fines on your legacy and told you to fold? Anyone else had a board? Try this on you. Drop your story below. Your experience might be the lifeline someone needs today. And hey, smash that subscribe if you want more HOA takedowns and a couple Vineyard dog cameos. Because when good people fight back together, the bullies always lose. And that victory, it tastes like the best wine you've ever had. People ask where those perpetual farming rights even came from. Here's the truth. They came from a kitchen table that smelled like black coffee and pipe smoke. My grandfather, Henry Thornfield, was a quiet man with hands like old rope. In 1962, the county tried to push a modernization plan: pave the creek, widen County Road, carve the valley into neat little blocks for commuters. Grandpa poured coffee for a councilman and slid a folded paper across the formica. You can build your dreams, he said, but not on my vines. The councilman chewed that over and, wrote in an exemption. Sometimes law is just a promise written tidy. He used to say, land is patient, but people ain't. The vines proved him right, year after year, harvest after harvest. Our family leaned on those plants through good rain and loud drought. When Grandma got sick, neighbors brought casseroles and pruners. When the barn roof peeled in the great wind of 1989, the volunteer fire crew hammered shingles in exchange for a crate of cab. That's the valley I inherited. Not perfect, but it had a spine. Karen arrived long after the valley spine had been paved into cul-de-sacs, with names like Whispering Quail and Silver Willow. The HOA brochures showed golden sunsets, kids on scooters, a golden retriever looking like a toothpaste ad. You know the vibe. They marketed country living with city convenience. Then spent every meeting figuring out how to make the country part go away. I don't say that to be cruel. There's folks who moved here for peace and got a front row seat to a culture war they didn't sign up for. A lot of them became good friends once they stopped getting their news from Karen's Facebook Lives. Karen's ascent to the board is a local legend. She started with a bake sale, then a neighborhood watch, then a bylaw cleanup that, somehow, made the board smaller and the president stronger. She changed the meeting schedule so only retirees and remote workers could attend. She ran unopposed in a spring election when most people were at Little League. And boom, Madam President, the minutes from those early meetings read like a slow tightening of a belt. New paint colors approved. Then 3 non-compliant mailboxes photographed. Then fines proposed. Small things that teach people to look down instead of around. Preston, meanwhile, played chess with parcels. He bought easements, swapped lots, and charmed a planning commissioner over golf. He once told a contractor, "The valley is almost ripe." The contractor told his barber. The barber told me, "News moves in funny ways in a town where there's one good sandwich shop." The first time Karen threatened me with daily fines, I laughed. Not out loud, my mama raised me better. But inside, come on. An HOA telling a farm how to farm is like a book club trying to ban the alphabet. Then, the letters to my bank started. That part scared me. I ain't gonna lie. Farms run on a thin line of credit in a good year. Bad rumors can tighten that line like a noose. So I took a page from Grandpa. I brewed coffee, opened folders, and made promises in tidy writing. Every rule book they waved at me, I read twice. Every permit number, I cross-checked. I treated the county clerks like librarians, which is to say, like treasure keepers. Ethel, queen of the records room, taught me how to read the pale blue maps where property lines are drawn like veins. Most fights, she said, tapping the map with her pencil, are really about where the blood flows. Barrel would lie under the desk with his chin on my boot. When my eyes crossed from legalese, I'd look at him and say, "Buddy, are we the baddies?" He'd thump his tail like a metronome. Dogs got better moral compasses than half the boards I've met. If you've never met a weaponized HOA, let me give you the sampler platter. There's the phantom violation. You receive a stern letter about a rule you never heard of. The rule was adopted at a special meeting on a Wednesday afternoon with 12 minutes notice. The letter says you have 10 days to repaint your fence the approved shade of Dove Fog. The color code is proprietary. Sold by one store. Owned by a cousin of a board member. Pay the fine. Buy the paint. Obey. There's the safety panic. Someone posts a photo of a coyote, or, like, a shadow that could be a coyote. The board calls an emergency session about wildlife mitigation. Next month, the open field behind your house, where kids chase fireflies, gets fenced off for a temporary staging area. Preston's trucks arrive at dawn. And, whoops, the field becomes a sales office. There's the patriotic wedge. A veteran flies a flag that's too big by the handbook standards. He gets fined. People get mad at each other instead of the board. The board generously waives the fine after a new segment. Meanwhile, the bylaw about accessory structures gets rewritten behind the scenes to outlaw, say, rain barrels. And then there's the crown jewel, the aesthetic. Everything funnels through it. It's subjective. It's slippery. It's a cudgel wrapped in satin. Karen could look at the Sistine Chapel and sigh that the cherubs feel off-palette. I got to see behind the curtain when a former board member, Linda, knocked on my door one rainy afternoon. Mid-50s. Sharp bob. Eyes like she could spot a lie across a football field. She had resigned for personal reasons. She set a thumb drive on my table between 2 mugs of tea. "Before you look," she said. "I was wrong. I went along. And I'm sorry." On the drive were email threads, drafts of bylaws, and a group chat called Sunset Circle Core. The chat had all the hits. How do we label Marcus's tractor as noise? Anyone got a contact at County Health? We should flood Yelp before his next wedding. The tone ping-ponged from self-righteous to giggly to mean, like a choir singing off-key. Karen was the loudest soprano. One exchange stuck with me. Karen, the vines look messy on the East Ridge. Trish, they're vines. Karen, could we define messy? Trish, as nature. Karen, not helpful. Trish. Linda's note at the bottom said, "I kept this because someday the truth would need a receipt." We added those receipts to the stack Jake was building. Discovery, the legal kind, ain't sexy on television, but it's where the bones get counted. Every vendor invoice the HOA submitted. We traced every affidavit attached to a complaint. We read out loud, looking for the sentence that limps. It's slow. It's boring. And it's how you win. Clean. Let me slow down and replay the morning the warrants dropped. Because folks keep asking what that actually looked like. The fog was thick enough to butter. I was in row 32. Section B. Pruning late because a cold snap had kissed the tips. Barrel ranged ahead. No slow. Tail doing that happy helicopter. A flash of red through the fog taillights caught my eye. Then another. Then, the crunch of tires where there shouldn't be tires. I heard the gate chain clink, and then the kind of quiet that comes with radios on whisper. Federal agents. A voice called, "Calm. Practiced. We have warrants." Karen appeared like she was stepping onto a stage. Crisp blazer in winter white. Hair sprayed like a helmet. She held her phone chest high. "Already broadcasting. I think. For the record," she said, "I am here to ensure community safety. The way some people say, bless your heart." Agent Rodriguez, who I'd known as the county inspector for months, showed me the paper pages and pages. Signatures and seals. The whole Sunday suit. I nodded. "Mind the vines," I said. Because habit is funny when adrenaline spikes. Preston rolled up late in a shiny truck that still smelled like dealership. He carried a leather folder and an expression he probably practiced in the mirror, concerned. Confident. Above it all. He shook the wrong hand, that of another agent, and then tried to pivot like it was a joke. It wasn't. They walked the subdivision first. Measurements. Photos. They opened utility boxes with keys that, most homeowners have never seen. They paced off a retention basin that never retained. They measured silt on a culvert lip with a little metal card. I remember that because it felt like poetry, the universe keeping score in millimeters. Karen followed, narrating for her audience. These are federal overreaches, she said. This is harassment. She pointed at me. He orchestrated this. An agent politely asked her to step back. She did. But 2 steps later, she was back in frame. Voice rising. Barrel gave her the side eye you reserve for people who talk in theaters. When the box trucks arrived, that's when the neighborhood woke up for real. People came out in robes and slippers, holding mugs. Kids peeking around legs. A few waved at me. Tentative. A few turned away. Ashamed. A handful looked relieved. Like a toothache finally getting numb. The moment of cuffs wasn't cinematic. No shouted rights. No flying papers. Just that quick, efficient click. Preston's jaw twitched. Karen's eyes went glassy. Then hard. She started to speak. Stopped. Started again. This is a misunderstanding, she said. You can't. We have an attorney. You'll get your calls, the agent said. I ain't proud of the smile that tried to creep up my face. I swallowed it like a too big pill. A kid on a scooter asked his mom. Are they bad guys? The mom said. They broke rules. It hit me then how complicated the word rules is. After the headlines. The grind. People think the big boom is the whole story. Really? It's the midpoint. Depositions are where fancy myths go to die. Jake prepared me like a coach with game film. Answer only what's asked. He said. Don't volunteer. Don't fill silence. Karen's attorney tried to friend me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He asked if I had a vendetta against suburban living. I said I had a vendetta against lying. He asked if my events ever exceeded safe capacity. I said we followed the fire marshal's numbers to the letter and offered the sign-in sheets. He asked if I ever provoked the HOA. I said I baked cookies for their winter festival and got told my tablecloth was too rustic. Preston's deposition felt like watching a dam leak. A little more. Then, someone sticks a screwdriver in the soft spot. Jake slid an exhibit across the table. A spreadsheet showing HOA payments to Silverline Consulting. Who owns Silverline, he asked. Preston, a vendor. Jake, the tax records list your sister's name. Preston, she does administrative work. Jake, for which deliverables? Long silence. The court reporter's fingers made soft music. We had emails where Karen coached residents on how to write impactful complaints. We had before and after photos with timestamps that turned staged trash piles back into clean sidewalks. We had an invoice for wildlife mitigation that paid for, wait for it, uplighting at the entrance sign. An HOA isn't evil by default. Let me say that. A good board can keep a neighborhood tidy and fair. The rot happens when a board forgets it's a service, not a throne. When aesthetic becomes code for people like us. When fines become a revenue stream instead of a last resort. It happens slowly, then fast. One evening, Linda the whistleblower sat at my kitchen island with a glass of cab and told me about the meeting where she broke. A family on Juniper had a wheelchair ramp that didn't match the approved stain. She said, Karen wanted to fine them. I said no. she said. We can't play favorites, I said, condemning Noah spray. We can be human. Everyone stared at their hands. Linda resigned the next morning. Community healing looks like potlucks and paperwork. We held forums at the old Grange Hall because the HOA center felt haunted with fluorescent guilt. Father Miguel moderated with the patience of a saint and the spine of a linebacker. People cried. People yelled a little. Then they signed up for committees that actually fix things. We started with water. Bad grading had sent muddy runoff into the creek, like chocolate milk. Dr. Bennett Sarah drew a recovery plan on butcher paper in my kitchen. We slow the water here, she said, drawing a meander with a marker. We plant willows here. We rebuild the riprap with real stone. Not that plastic nonsense. Volunteers showed up with gloves and thermoses and more energy than I've seen since harvest. Next. Transparency. The new interim neighborhood council notice, not an HOA, put every dollar online. Contracts got posted before they were signed. Meetings happened in the evening so working folks could come. We banned executive sessions except for when the law demanded. And even then, we reported back like grown-ups. Turns out, sunlight ain't just for vines. Kids came to the vineyard for field trips. We set up station soil under microscopes. Grape leaves to sketch. A crush pad demo with water instead of juice, because second graders are adorable chaos. Barrel and Justice wore little kerchiefs that said assistant farmers. A girl named Naomi asked me if grapes get scared in storms. I said, maybe. But they hold on to each other. She nodded like that made deep sense. There was joy, too. Real joy. We held a harvest dance under strings of bulb lights, fiddles, and a stand-up bass in the corner. Old folks taught line dances. Teenagers pretended not to care and then smiled. Karen's old allies came. Some sheepish, some stubborn, most just, ready to be neighbors again. Linda spun with a widower from Maple Street and laughed like a bell. People message me asking for a step-by-step. I'm not a guru. And this ain't legal advice. But here's what I tell my own brother if his HOA went feral. Take it as a story, not a sermon. First, breathe. Bullies count on panic. Read the actual document's declaration. Bylaws. Rules. Highlight what they can and cannot do. Most handbooks look scary in bulk, but flimsy up close. Second, build a binder. Dates. Letters. Photos. Names. Save emails as PDFs. Screenshot posts. Because mean things tend to disappear. Keep it tidy so a judge or a journalist can read it like a book. Third, find your Ethel. The clerk. The librarian. The records angel. Bring cookies. Ask good questions. Learn how your town files, permits, and posts notices. There's always a bulletin board nobody looks at. And it is covered in gold. Fourth, find allies. There's always neighbors who are tired of the theater. Some are scared. Some feel alone. Knock on doors like it's 1985. People still open up when you show up kind. Fifth, document without escalating. Chimeras. Yes. Taunting. No. You catch more sunlight with, well, sunlight. Sixth, if you can swing it. Get a lawyer who actually enjoys this dance. Some fights you can do pro se. Some you shouldn't. Ask for referrals at the farmer's market. It's funny. but it works. 7th. Tell the story. Carefully. Truthfully. Not as a tantrum, but as a timeline. Bullies hate timelines. They prefer vibes. A clean timeline is like a level. Lay it on their claims and watch the bubble show what's crooked. Finally. Don't let the fight eat your life. Plant tomatoes. Walk your dog. Watch high school football on Friday nights. A bully wants your attention like a mosquito wants hot skin. Starve them of drama. There's a version of this story where I sold. I think about it sometimes, call it a ghost life. In that version, I take Preston's money. I move to a condo near the bay, with a view of water that ain't mine. I drink wine from stores that spell terroir wrong. I sleep okay for a while. Then, a storm rattles the windows, and I hear, in the wind, the sound of vines rubbing leaves like old friends. I go quiet inside. I become the guy who tells bar stories that start with, back when. In the real version, the ground keeps my boot print. The dog's trails stitch the rows like embroidery. Sarah's laugh carries down the hill and scares up quail. On Sundays, the church bell and the winery bell answer each other like cousins. That's worth more than any stack of bills in a briefcase. Sometimes, Karen writes from minimum security. Long emails typed on a slow terminal. She thinks if she can explain long enough, people will come back to that old gravity. I read them. I even answer. Short. I wish you peace. I write. And I wish you neighbors. Preston took a plea. He'll be out one day. Probably sooner than folks like. Maybe he'll try to start over in a new county with a new polo shirt. I hope he learns the shape of enough. As for me, I'm not looking to be famous. The channel blew up, sure. People like a David and Goliath, where David also knows zoning code. But the best comments aren't the ones calling me a hero. They're the ones where a kid says, "My grandpa kept his orchard because we showed your video to the county." Or, "Our HOA walked back a dumb rule because we packed the meeting and, used our indoor voices." So yeah, what would you do if your HOA tried to bulldoze your legacy? Would you sell? Would you fight? Would you bake cookies and also file motions? Drop your take. Be loud. But be kind. The next family is reading. And if you're one of the good board members out there, bless you. Stay transparent. Make meetings boring again. If your president starts acting like a mayor, remind them they are a volunteer with a binder. A year after the raid, we hosted a harvest festival called Rules and Rights. We set long tables under the oaks. Every place setting had two cards. One said, "Rules I'm glad we have." The other said, "Rights I won't give up." People wrote, "No speeding past bus stops. No stealing packages. No blasting music at midnight." And then, my garden, my flag, my ramp, my vines. Linda stood up, hands shaking, face steady, and said, "I was on the wrong side until I remembered the difference." She looked around, found me in the crowd, and gave a little nod that said more than an apology. We clinked glasses at sunset. The light went gold the way it does only in early fall. Beryl stole a dinner roll. Justice stole a heart. Somewhere, a coyote sang, which, ironically, made the neighborhood feel safer than any committee ever did. I raised my glass and said, "To rules that serve people, to rights that feed them, to neighbors, not enforcers, and to bullies learning that, in this valley, we don't scare easy." If this story lit a fire in you, Tell me why. If it made you mad. Tell me, at who? If it made you, call your granddad, or check your bylaws, or plant a tomato, tell me that. 2. 'Cause at the end of the day, this ain't just my vineyard. It's a map for how a place can remember itself when a shiny brochure tries to sell it a new name. What would you do here? Anyone else had a HOA do this to you? I'm all ears, and the dogs are wagging.